Okay, Teddy Bickelli.
I am here.
Bickelli present. Yvonne Kiravu is gone. Nolan Coffin. Barbara Dreher-Klein.
Here.
Dreher-Klein present. Steve Fensky.
Good morning.
Fensky present. Steve Georgi.
I'm here.
Georgi present. Jason Hollanday. Mark Johnson.
Good morning, everyone.
Johnson present. Brian Crambier is gone. Micah Myers.
Here.
Myers present. Phil Stahlberger.
Present.
Stahlberger present. Teresa Sunday.
Here.
Sunday present. Jim Wycombe.
Here.
Wycombe present. Paul Wirtz. Dave Wolf.
Morning.
Wolf present.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. And then if we have others join as we go along, we can make sure we add them to the minutes. So first, kind of we're agenda item today is to approve the minutes from December 19th and December 22nd, where we reviewed a recommendation for 2022, or at least our document from 2022. Carol had those included in the meeting invite, so hopefully had a chance to glance over them. Do we have any concerns, issues, questions from anyone? Okay. Not hearing any, we will, the minutes are approved. And Carol, I think Paul Wirtz just joined as well.
I see that. I'll mark Wirtz as present.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so obviously, Happy New Year to everyone. I don't think we've talked since the year started. Maybe we've seen each other here in a couple of events here and there, but it's good to see everyone. And obviously, welcome to our first session of 2023. This year, we only have a couple of sessions before sort of the task force, at least the charge that we had for the 3.5 years is over. So we'll have two more meetings, one on February 22nd and one on March 27th. And really our goal is to really more focus on the legislation, and so we're going into this legislative session, what's happening there, how do we make sure that our voices are heard, how do we make sure that the report that we put together finds its way into the right hands. And as you saw already, there was the proposal that came from the governor as far as what to do with the surplus and the dollars allocated to broadband there, which is exciting. And that is a testament to working with with DEED and the Office of Broadband Development, and making sure that we obviously continue to inform of what we're hearing, help put together some of the numbers and what's required, which we've done in the last report. So it's all exciting. So really the question, or the task at hand for the next two months, 2.5 months, is really, again, how do we make sure that legislators are aware of what we've said, make sure that they're acknowledge the deficiencies we have today and the work that's ahead of us. So, but also lots coming in the this year particularly, and the years to come as well. So I think it's exciting to see all the movement that we're seeing with respect to broadband. So with that in mind, the agenda for today is we're going to have Devin come and give us a quick update on the sort of the legislative session. Still very early, but kind of give us an idea of what's happening. From that, we've also invited Nathan Zacharias from the technology policy analyst from the Association of Minnesota County to talk about this whole idea of how do we advocate for broadband and what are the ways to be able to influence legislature. Then from that, we will turn it over to Bree to give us just an update of what's happening at the Office of Broadband Development. We've done that the last couple of meetings, and I think they've been extremely useful, as well as an update on the program around line extension. So we will go a little bit deeper on that. We'll have Diane come on and give us an update on the border grant program and what's happening there, and so what's happened and also what's going to come, which there's lots of activities there. Somewhere in there, we'll take a break if we need it, but when the right time makes sense, we will do that. And then we will close off really with a presentation from Hannah Buckland from the Digital Equity Office or Digital Equity Program, part of OBD. And we've had her before as a speaker, so again, an update on what's happening there. So, and I suspect that a couple of our meetings will sort of have the same tone, updates or what's going on. And then obviously at the end, we'll also leave lots of time for discussion among task force members, things we might be thinking about doing or things we should be pushing on and whatnot. So we'll have ample time to have that discussion. And with all that said, and any public comments, we should be able to wrap up by noon or sooner. Hopefully that agenda sounds okay. Any questions, comments, concerns before we kind of get into the discussion today? All right, hearing none. Devin, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Teddy. Is everybody able to see some slides loading up here?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Yep, just a quick legislative update. Will only take a few minutes of your time here. Just to start off, as Teddy had mentioned, the governor's broadband recommendation is out. It's $138 million for each year of the biennium. Just recognizing that we still have a lot of work to do, and hopefully pairing this with the federal funding will be a good approach, especially, there have been delays with the federal funding in the past, so state dollars are still needed. Broadband has had a handful of hearings so far. Broadband with Bree has been running back and forth to the Capitol in various committee meetings, testified in Senate Ag, and then both Teddy and Bree presented in House Ag, Bree presenting an overview of OBD and the broadband work, and Teddy presenting the task force recommendations. Both did a great job. And then the governor's budget recommendation we presented last week in the House, and then we'll be presenting tomorrow in the Senate. Just some quick notes. I have not seen any broadband bills out yet. I haven't checked this week, but as of last Friday, nothing. Something to point out is that there have been a lot of new lawmakers involved with broadband this year. Not the usual suspects that we've seen, Representative Eklund being gone, broadband being moved to a different committee of jurisdiction this year as compared to the last biennium, new chair in the Senate. So there have been a lot of just opportunities for just education, I think. They've asked some very basic questions like, what does the 100 and 100 by 20 mean? Or what's the difference between mobile and fiber? So a lot of fresh faces, and otherwise people seem receptive to broadband. Not really any pushback that I've heard yet. So that is all I have, but happy to take any questions.
Micah has a hand up. Go ahead, Micah.
Go for it.
Micah.
That's on an accident.
There you go. Oh, that was an accident. Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is Barbara. I have a question. Can't find my hand thing. We're going to miss this year the Rural Broadband Coalition Broadband Day on the Hill. That was such a great way to bring in a whole bunch of people from around the state to come in and talk broadband. It doesn't sound like anyone else is working on anything like that this year, and this would have been the great year to do it because there are so many new people. So has there been any thoughts on that?
None that I've discussed, excuse me, on the agency side. I want to say, I don't know if Brent Christensen is on the line. I feel like MTA sometimes also does the Broadband Day on the Hill. But that's as much as I know.
I think they did theirs last week. My representative texted me that night and asked me if I was in St. Paul because there were broadband people up there. But that was just the providers, not everybody else that would lobby for it. So something to think about.
Steve?
Well, as a member of the executive board for the Rural Broadband Coalition, we're unfortunately in a state of flux as we've lost our president, He's got a health concern, so he resigned. And we had a meeting a week ago, talked about trying to move forward. We don't have any revenue coming in. We haven't sent out any invoices to maintain membership. So I think supposedly we had a bill due. We were trying to get our arms around that information and then have another meeting quickly to determine if we can move forward. My recommendation is we would have to convene a membership meeting, regardless if anybody's paying dues, and see if there's time to generate interest in maintaining the coalition in some form or fashion, and doing exactly like Barbara said, at least having a lobby day, because other than companies, there's no citizen coalition out there moving the effort. So
I still have my banner from when we went there a few years ago.
Absolutely. So that's what I can say about what's going on with the coalition.
Thank you, Steve. Other questions or comments for Devin? Right. Not hearing any. Nathan, are you on?
I am indeed.
All right. Good morning, Nathan. Thank you for making the time to be here with us. And I know we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things, obviously, the task force can work on here in for the time we have left is really advocating for broadband funding and at the legislator level. So, and I know you're an expert at this, so wanted to make sure we brought you on and really talk to the task force a little bit about the work you've done, but also some of the work you're doing now. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I will attempt to, I've got a PowerPoint. Looks like, just give me 1 second. I'm going to download the file because sharing on this is a little bit different than it is on Zoom. Give me 1 second. I can just download this quick.
No worries.
Okay. On my computer, I think that's working. Or did I just share it in the chat?
Not seeing you yet.
Well, let's just go ahead and share a whole screen then.
Yep.
Is that working?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Technology policy analyst can't share slides. Okay. So, many of you know me. For those who don't, my name's Nathan Zacharias. I'm the technology policy analyst at the Association of Minnesota Counties. And Teddy graciously asked me to share a bit about the history of advocacy. I spent a lot of time working with the Minnesota Rural Broadband Coalition and working on legislative advocacy training, how to be an advocate. And so I thought I'd share some of those thoughts with you today. I do realize that many of you are very talented advocates in your own right. So some of this might be a little bit of review, but it's always good to brush up on some of these things. And then I have a little bit of material too at the end on what you all can do, perhaps as an organization specifically, to advocate for broadband. So what we're going to cover today in the presentation is your materials that you would likely need to be an effective advocate, who you would need to be meeting with, how you can speak to legislators effectively, some ideas on messaging and strategy, as well as a list of do's and don'ts that I share with every single person who goes to the legislature. The first thing that I've usually employed with the coalition is having a fact sheet. You've all produced a wonderful report that's chock full of tons of information. But what I've found is really effective is to find a way to distill that information into a one-page fact sheet that you can hand out to legislators. So what I've typically done in the past with the coalition is put a map of availability of service in the state. Now, we used to use that 25 by 3 map. I tend to share the 100 by 20 map since we've passed 2022. That gives legislators an idea of what service looks like in their district. They will often pick it up, look, and point directly to their district. So it's nice to give them a map. Maps are good. I would also put on there, in some way or another, the available state and federal funding, because we've had a lot of headlines flying around about RDOF, about Reconnect, about BEAD, all the different federal funding sources, and there are very few people outside of this call and those involved in the broadband world that know down to the dollar what funds are available. So having that in front of legislators is really helpful, because they often have questions about, well, I thought this was funded, or I thought that was funded, or aren't we getting this money? So having some easy to understand points on that is good. I also usually typically include information about the state statutory speed goals, letting them know what that is. I heard Devin talking a bit about this before I started. In the hearing in the House Agriculture Committee, they were asking, what does the 100 by 20 mean? What does it serve? So that's an opportunity for you to outline, why do we have these speed goals? What are we hoping to accomplish? And then the final bit that I would put on there is a suggested funding level. If you are making an ask for funding at the legislature, put that clearly on the fact sheet and use all of the information that you've talked about to justify, why is this specific amount of money necessary for us to work on at the legislature. In the past, the Rural Broadband Coalition has used your task force number to say, well, this is the this is the group that works on broadband collectively, and this is the number that they've come up with based on their research. Could also use the suggested number from the governor's budget request, things like that, where they have concrete basis in something in reality. And the final note is, make it concise, make it easy to read, and absolutely do not put a wall of text on the page. That is a surefire way to put a legislator to sleep, is give them a multi-paragraph fact sheet. They're going to look at it and go, I don't have time to read this. Give them easy bullet points, graphics, all that kind of stuff. Make it easy to digest and to look at. The second piece on the materials side would be, if you choose to, letters and testimony to committees. So typically, if there's legislation in front of a House or a Senate committee that you support, you could either sign up to testify in person or via Zoom to that committee, or you could write a letter on behalf of the task force. We wrote a lot of letters and testified as the Rural Broadband Coalition, as did the industry groups as well. If you write a letter, you must submit it ahead of time. So you have to know when those committees are meeting and what the legislation or overview material they're covering on broadband is, and you have to submit it to the committee staff. And if you do that, you can submit that letter and have it included in their packets that the committee members will receive. Now, if you're testifying in person, you'd want to submit that letter or fact sheet ahead of time as well, because during your testimony, you can introduce yourself and then say, you all have our fact sheet and letter in your packets, and then you hold it up and then magically watch as every one of them pulls it out of their packet to look at. So you're guaranteeing a little bit more face time with that material that you've put together. So for switching over to who to meet with, again, I know many of you are experienced in this and you already know this, but it's good to go over it again. So the primary people that you would like to meet with should you choose to do advocacy at the Capitol, would be the Senate and House committee chairs of the Committee of Jurisdiction on your issue. In the Senate, the Agriculture, Rural Development, and Broadband Committee is chaired by Senator Eric Putnam from St. Cloud. And in the House, it's just the Agriculture, Finance, and Policy Committee, and that's Representative Samantha Vang. In addition to meeting with them first, they are the people that make all of the decisions regarding that committee. They work with the members of their own party, respectively, but they are the ultimate say on that. You'll also want to meet with the vice chairs. Vice chairs are typically the majority party, and they're typically freshmen. They give them an opportunity to sit in and be chair to learn about the committee process. You'll also want to consider meeting with the minority lead. So whoever is in the minority party on that committee, they will have a designated person, usually based on seniority, to lead the caucus on that committee. You'll want to involve them no matter what. And then from there, you'll want to meet with the rest of the committee members of both parties. So essentially, meet with the Committee of Jurisdiction and all of the members. Then you could also meet with the Senate and House Finance chairs. Those are the chairs of the final stop of any funding bill along the way. They're very important people. They're part of the caucus leadership. In addition, you would also want to, if you can, meet with the Senate and House leadership from the majority and minority parties. They're the ones that are going to be dictating which bills are going on the floor, which ones are going to be rolled into omnibus bills, are they going separately, and so on. And then finally, as individual members of the task force, you could meet directly with your legislators. I'm sure many of you already do this. But that is kind of the run of the most important people. But then you can also talk with as many of the rest of the legislatures as you so choose. If there's somebody that's particularly interested in your issue, perhaps somebody that's carrying a bill on the issue that's not on the committee, you'd want to meet with them, talk with them. It's about advocacy and education. You can never meet with too many legislators is basically what I will say there. To get the word out. Some do's and don'ts. This is pretty basic, but it's very important. So if you are meeting with legislators, be on time, even if they are late. Do not be late. They have very tough schedules. Do have a clear message. Do stick to the script. And this is my most important one. Be courteous to staff. They are the gatekeepers of these legislators, their calendars, who they meet with. They will remember if you were rude to them. They will remember if you were overbearing, and they perhaps won't give you a meeting in the future or be less likely to. As far as don'ts go, don't argue with legislators ever under any circumstances. Don't tell them that they're wrong. Even if you feel strongly that they are. Don't post negative comments on social media. Remember, Twitter is not real life. You are not going to convince somebody to vote differently by tweeting at them. And finally, don't lie or mislead legislators. It's just a horrible idea. You'll lose your credibility forever if you get on the wrong side of that one. Again, pretty straightforward stuff, but it bears repeating. How to speak with legislators. So say you've got a meeting with them. The golden rule is remember what your mother taught you. Be nice. Always be positive. Always be nice. And remember that they're human beings. So they have a lot of responsibility. They have personal commitments. They might have difficulties of their own. They might be having a bad day. They might be having a good day. Just remember that they're human beings and not just empty suit politicians, as some people would like to say. Be respectful of their time. So know how long your meeting is and think about what you're going to say in that amount of time. And absolutely beware of Minnesota small talk. It can eat up your entire meeting. Oh, you remember so-and-so from the district. You went to high school with so-and-so. And before you know it, your 15-minute meeting is down to 3 minutes to actually talk about broadband. I've had it happen to me. They love small talk. Just be conscious of it. Use direct language, and after telling them about the things on your fact sheet and the things that you're advocating for, ask them if they're going to support your request directly. If they say no or I'll think about it, don't press them. Don't try to get to yes. You're not selling them anything. You're certainly not selling them a car. just let them think about it. Or if they don't support it, it's, again, don't argue with them. It's a very, very bad idea. If they say yes, just say thank you for your support and then ask them to advocate within their caucus for the issue. Oftentimes, caucus meetings are the most important ones. They will all get together, and if you have enough people that you've met with advocating for your issue within the caucus meetings, generally the caucus will tend to support those things. Final slide here, messaging and strategy. And so this is where you might take some of this information and think about how you want to message your issues that you care about and strategize about it. So this goes back a little bit to the fact sheet, but develop a set of uniform talking points for your issue. And you can all, as members of the task force, tailor this to your professions. So you all care about broadband, but you all care about it in different ways and for different reasons. And so you can have that uniform set of talking points, but you can talk about those things on that list in a way that benefits or highlights the things that you work on in your profession. Before you meet with your legislator, find out where they're from. Learn a little bit about their district, know where they're from, maybe what their background is. They usually have a little bit of information on the legislative website, and be ready to talk about how what you're asking for would impact their district specifically and their constituents. There's power in numbers. The Broadband Coalition was a great example of this. Partner with other organizations that care about the issue. Obviously, the Association of Minnesota Counties cares deeply about this. We're working on this issue directly, as is the League of Cities, townships, and I could go on forever with the organizations that care about this. So work together with other organizations to talk about the issue in the same way. Again, those uniform talking points are really important. And the last point here is to consider writing joint letters from your organizations. So perhaps this is just a letter to caucus leadership, perhaps it's a letter to a committee, but if you can show that there are similar organizations standing up for the same message, that's going to go a long way in getting your point across. So with that, that's my contact information. I know many of you already have it, but thus ends my presentation. And Teddy, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And but otherwise, thank you for giving me some time to talk about this with you guys.
Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate that. There are a couple of questions. So Barbara, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the conversation, local property tax dollars in the border-to-border applications. Nathan, you and I talked about it a little bit. For our county, for four townships, we put up $650,000 for the 50% match. And I want to argue really heavily about making that 50% different. I would rather see more state and federal dollars. And I sent a message to your staff, Bree, asking, is there any way you can track what property tax dollars are in the border-to-border applications so that we can better make the argument to make that 50-50 match 75-25 in more rural areas? Very tough to come up with that kind of money out of property taxes.
Yeah, I spoke, actually, it's interesting to say this. I spoke with some Cottonwood County commissioners that were at the Broadband Summit last week. And they brought up a really good point and asked me to share this whenever somebody brings up that local match aspect. In Cottonwood County, they don't have the ability to do a local option sales tax. They don't have a Walmart in the county. Their primary tax base is agricultural land. And so if they try to raise money as a county to put towards a grant of some kind for broadband, which they're working on applying for these grants with their providers in the area, they have to think really, really, really hard about using those local property tax dollars or any other tax dollars that they might bring in, because their tax base is so limited. It's a low population, high agriculture county. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, I just want to add that we actually talked about a local sales tax here, and we have the same issue because people shop outside of our county. In our county, it's much harder for our vendors to survive anyways. And so we have just property taxes to go to.
Yep.
Other questions for Nathan? Again, it'd be great if you could raise the hand. If not, you can come off mute. It's hard to find. All right. Don't see any other question. Nathan, thank you so much. I think that was refreshing. Even for some of us that may know this, I think this is good information to have and good reminders as well, right? Because I mean, I think that's important. And again, I think we all, in one shape or form, could have an opportunity to testify or to work with legislators. That's the best way to kind of get some of these things through. Obviously, we put our recommendation forward, and we use that as a basis. But then, obviously, it's these conversations and the one-on-ones that really make a difference. So, thank you for taking the time to be here with us and kind of giving us a little bit of an update there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Transitioning to the next topic for today, it's an update from the Office of Broadband Development. Bree, I believe you're on, so I will turn it over to you.
Right. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Nathan. That was always very helpful, even for some of us who have been spending a lot of time with you up there. Just really appreciative of Devin and his support helping me get around just basic things in the Capitol and finding parking and finding my way back out. So learning all how to navigate in many ways up there. So it's been really good. And so far, I think going well. Want to just briefly recap on our kickoff, our Connecting One Minnesota event, which was the 25th, so last Wednesday. Our final registration numbers were 193 online participants and 242 in-person registrations. I know we did not hit that in person, but that's what was registered at the time. A special thank you to Teddy for really providing an opportunity for us to reflect on where Minnesota has been with our past three chairs. Margaret Anderson Kelleher was also there, and Rick King, and I think just heard so many people say that it was just nice to have them up there and sort of talk about how the office or how the task force has evolved in broadband in Minnesota. So I also just want to extend another thank you to any of the speakers who are on, which many of you were panelists, sharing your expertise and being there and being present as well. And also just my team. Like, I can't thank them enough for sort of allowing me in my first few months to sort of be this coordinator of something that needed to happen and happened quickly. And everybody that I've been talking to, a lot of people are like, are you doing one again next year? And though I don't even want to think about that, we will be doing a survey in the next few weeks. And if there is the value there that we're hearing from people, we certainly will entertain that to some degree, knowing that we're missing sort of the broadband conference that usually would happen each year. In the office itself, we did hire one new grant administrator that is starting this week and in the process of hopefully making an offer to another person that we had interviewed. So more to come on that. And let's see. I think unless there's specific questions on those things, I can transition right to the line extension information. Teddy?
Yeah. Any questions with Bree on any OBD updates? Again, if you think of any, Bree's going to continue on line extension and we can regroup on that. So please go ahead.
Okay, great. So just wanted to give a little update on the line extension. So just for reference, that this has $15 million from the ARPA Capital Projects Fund, and it was new in November here. People can go and register their unserved homes and businesses either online, which sounds silly to say, I guess, if your service is terrible, but we've had a lot of interest. They can also call, and then we also have a paper application as well, which we have received quite a few that way. As of yesterday, I believe, Carol, can you throw the map up on the screen just so everybody can see for reference? Thank you. We've had 856 applicants across the state, and of them, there are 803 households and 53 businesses. So you can take a second to look at that while it's up. And then we are in, and this is 3 months into the application process. So just a reminder that we'll give it a 6-month period to submit unserved addresses. And then we'll review them. And that doesn't mean that it goes away. We'll certainly keep doing a 6-month period review until the funding is no longer there or is refunded by the legislature. The Office of Broadband, once we get to that 6-month process, will send a list of the addresses to each of the broadband providers offering service in Minnesota. And then providers have a 10-day window to notify the office if they can provide service or they provide service. And I will just say that in the next month or so, we will be collecting the most up-to-date email address for each of our providers so that when the emails do come out with our list, that we have that ready to go. And I believe Connected Nation is going to help with us on that. But if you know providers or are providers and want to make sure to connect with our office, please send that to our main office email or one of us so that we can start that database. And then addresses that are not served by a provider in or can't be built in that area with awarded board grant dollars will hold a 60-day reverse auction. And then providers will then, within that time frame, also identify the grant dollar amount they're requesting in order to extend broadband service. Within 60 days of the auction closing, the office will select the bids that request the least amount of financial support from the state are the most cost-effective for our state resources. And then the Office of Broadband will then enter into a line extension agreement with each winning bidder. The winning bidders will have a year from the date the contracts are signed to complete. And winning bidder must build broadband services that offer at least 100 by 100. So with that, that's sort of the update there. A reminder, those are up to $25,000 projects per pass or per home or business. We don't expect that each one. Obviously, we know that we're in difficult areas, but that's sort of the dollar amount. And with that, we were also anticipating that we would be able, with the funding, to do about 600. So obviously, we have all these applications already, which is wonderful. We have to verify them. Obviously, all of them will not be eligible for this program, and we will certainly help navigate that with and communicate that with each of our applicants, as well as working with our providers. So I think the only other thing is I can pop in the chat, or maybe Carol can. We do have a one-pager that is available on our website. We can put it in the chat, and if you have specific needs, if you're going out there for meetings and want physical copies, we can probably work with you to arrange copies and send them off to you as well. I know Steve Fensky has asked with the township meetings that they're going out and about across the state, that they are going to share the message of the line extension. And so we're happy to help get the word out in any way that we can. I think that's what I have.
Okay. Thank you, Bree. Question from Steve Georgie.
I'm just curious if there's been any consideration of accelerating this process. People, you're looking at 2 years, 18 months if everything fell into place. It just seems we're not doing everything we can to get these people connected. That to me is, I don't know, you got 800 already. Well, why can't you cut it off after 90 days and start another application process? And move the notification and reverse auctions up. I'm not certain why 6 months is the magic time frame.
So obviously a really great point, Steve. I will also defer to members of my team, because this was prior to me starting, that this was all taken care of. I think just recognizing that we have currently just announced a grant round and now going into another grant round, and we also want to make sure that if these projects that are submitted aren't in a servable area that are happening to get grants, we don't want to double build in any ways, and if they're going to be covered. So there is so much work that goes into the current grant administration that the team is doing to make sure that we are effectively using taxpayer dollars. And then I think just the timing, again, with all of those sort of things up in the air. So I get it. We all want it to happen faster. But Diane, am I missing something? Was something put into the negotiation at the legislative level that required some of that as well?
Point. We did announce a grant round in December of 2022 of grantees, and we know several of the addresses that have come in are in those project areas. And what we're also hoping to capture is the grantees from the current open round, that we can push any of the addresses registered on the line extension program that will get service from the current open grant round also, so it doesn't come out of our 15 million, because it's potentially not going to go all that far. And because it is a new program, we also probably need the time that's allowed by statute.
Thank you.
Barbara has a question.
Well, of course, the deed office knows we are the pilot project for this. That big red dot in southern Minnesota is Leesore County. Bree, you didn't say how many applications you've gotten in.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did. So we have 856 current applications as of yesterday. 803 are households and 53 are businesses.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, because the reason we did this is that we have a lot of fiber in the ground. The company was sold to someone from out of state, and they didn't finish building out. So we've done a really huge campaign here to finish out what was started, and there is some overlap with border to border too. But how can we as a county engage with the process? Do we just need to rely on our vendors to tell us what's up with it, or we've got a big different kind of investment in this because of our situation here? Can we get the addresses, for example?
Sure. So the way the program does work is people have to register themselves. So I think what you're already doing of getting the message out there, which is reflected on the big red dots, is probably the most important thing, is to make sure individuals are registering themselves. If they have difficulty, we're happy to help. Carol takes tens of applications every day and is working through all of those. And again, I think just, partnering with your associations have been helpful in getting the word out as well. We did in our communications team help me with sort of the FCC map education and trying to get that out to local papers. Now that the kickoff is over, I'll have more time, and hopefully we can focus on trying to get that line extension information out as well. And so just know we're trying our best to get the information out to people. But as far as like the community effort of applications, it has to be an individual or business that does that.
Oh, actually, my question was different than that. Could we get, when you do the run of the addresses for our county, can you tell us which addresses applied? Because that's what we don't know. There may be others right in the area that should have, could have.
Yeah. So.
And could you send me the map? I love the map.
I mean, we can definitely send the map. The more detailed, granular information, I'm not sure that as a state we could share personal information in the application, you know, with the addresses. That would be something, I mean, unless Diane, you know the quick answer to that, but I think, you know, without consent of the applications, we would have to go back to everyone and say, can we send this to your county? And I'm not sure, you know, the process of going into private data.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions for Bree on the line extension or anything else from the Office of Broadband Development? Steve, I have one more question.
Yeah, I was just curious, Diane, is the map available on your website? No?
No, that layer is built onto an internal map that we have. I think the disclaimer on the application indicates that the information will be provided to providers, which is what the law states. We're getting, maybe it shouldn't be, but it's surprising to me. We're getting a lot of requests for that list, and it makes me want to safeguard it even more and more. Because I don't know what people intend to do with the list. But the disclaimer and the law both state it should go to broadband providers. And that's why we're working with Connected Nation, because we also want to build in a kind of an incentive to participate in our mapping program by only giving it to providers that participate in the mapping data collection process, so that we know they actually have infrastructure in the state because they're reporting it and will report it after they build out. So that's the reason for the mechanism with Connected Nation.
It would, you know, you got a one pager and stuff like that, but I have not seen anything in media, etc., promoting the program. So I actually did a letter to the editor and tried to circulate it across northeastern Minnesota as best as I could, but it'd be nice to be able to reflect back to the map on occasion just to see if responses are coming in, because we can look at the other map and know that there are so many unserved or underserved areas in northeastern Minnesota, especially St. Louis County, Cooch County, etc. So just trying to figure out a mechanism to monitor progress, and you know, just thoughts on that. So
no, I certainly appreciate that. I think feel free to reach out to us when you are making you know, if you want an updated map. I try to definitely at the legislature and anytime I give a presentation to get the most updated numbers for that day and ask the team and also get that map. So we're more than happy to sort of provide the overview mapping at any time if you reach out to us. And again, now that the kickoff is over, hope to definitely get more information out and use our local medias and be creative on that messaging as well. So.
Other questions for Bree? Not seeing any. Oh, Steve, do you have one more?
well, it's kind of changing subjects, and I don't know if Bree's going to stay through the whole meeting, but you know, we heard from Barbara already talking about the match. And is there any thought whatsoever of recommending to the legislature that we modify the existing statutory language, which has the 50-50 and a $5 million cap, and improving that? Because I think we can't waste this opportunity. We can't wait till the session is over. And somebody needs to make that proposal. Doesn't look like it's going to be the Rural Broadband Coalition, but I'm just curious if the Office of Broadband wants to lead that charge.
Sure. So a couple of things with that. I think one, just recognizing our low density pilot program is very new. The having the ability within our office to have the shalls and mays for flexibility in the future is really important. But at this point, our applications are still robust, and we are getting applications based and that use up all of the funding we have at the 50%. So recognizing that doesn't work for every county, and that's why the low density pilot program was created. As far as just sort of legislative efforts, I will maybe kick it back. You have association members on here as well, which Nathan and I have had conversations. There is conversations happening. Specific, again, the bills aren't introduced yet, but I know there is at least interested in removing the $10 million cap, or going up to the $10 million instead of the $5 million permanently in the border to border program. And again, I think we have to do a report at the end of this year, and the application process on the low density program is happening right now within our border to border. So there's a lot of unknowns yet. Again, we know that that match is not tangible for every area, but we also need to better understand the interest in the low density, and if that 75% and increased cap amount will meet that charge. So I don't know if you want to ask any of the other associations, but that is what I have as far as the office itself at this point.
Barbara, do you have a question? Comment?
Yes, just to follow up, I think it would be great if you guys could do an analysis of the last year's application and how much of that 50% match was property tax dollars. For our application with our provider, it was $350,000 towards that match. And having that data, I think, would be very helpful for anyone to use in terms of discussing the 50% match.
Steve Fensky?
Yep, just to go back to Steve Georgie's comment on advocacy, our township officers are going to the Capitol this week, and we have meetings scheduled, and I believe with Chair Vang and likely Chair Putnam as well, and we'd be sure to have them add that as part of it. There may be other issues we have to talk about too with those groups, but just so you know, we are one of those groups out there still working on it as an advocacy manner.
Sorry, just to add that $350,000 is township funds. The townships will be paying the county back that over 10 years. So you can use that information from us.
Thank you. Other questions, comments for Bree? All right. See something in the chat. All right, so let's move on to the next topic before we take a quick break. It's an update on the border to border grant program. So Diane, I'll have you come on and give us some information about past rounds, future rounds, the dollars coming from NTIA, and then the low density program.
Sure. So as you all know, in December, we awarded $99,592,711 to 61 projects. 70 million of that was from the American Rescue Plan Act Capital Projects funds, and the rest was state funding, 25 million for fiscal year 23. And then we had some projects from prior rounds that came in under budget, and we rolled that back into the grant round. So the border to border funding, 99.6 million, the match or the leverage, private providers, counties, partners put in 152 million. This will deploy broadband to about 33,091 locations, 24,500 homes, about 3,500 businesses, almost 5,000 farms, and 137 community anchor institutions. The largest project awarded was at the $5 million cap. We actually had a few also near the cap, but that was East Central Energy's Isanti North project with 2,486 passings. And then the smallest was Meeker Co-op or Vibrance Lake Erie project at $19,000, and that had 28 passings. We opened round 8. We always get the calendar years and the fiscal year funding so we just say round 7, round 8. It helps us keep them a little bit cleaner. So round 8, the application window opened December 19th. The pre-application notifications had to be served by January 19th. The portal to submit the applications will open February 3rd, and requests can be made now to start setting that up. The applications are due March 2nd. All applications received will be posted by March 7th. Challenges are due by 4 p.m. on April 5th. We are anticipating funding decisions to be made by late spring, early summer. And the funding in this round is $25 million from state general revenue funds. That's the fiscal year 24 appropriation. And then $42 million from ARPA capital projects funds that was approved by the legislature in the 2022 session. So it's a $67 million total this round. Included in this round is the low density pilot program. So of that $67 million, the legislature said we can use $30 million for the low density pilot. And that pilot program can award up to 75% of the eligible costs and a maximum award of $10 million. So conceivably with that $30 million, we may end up only funding 3 projects. Applicants have to select whether they're applying to the traditional border-to-border program or to the low-density program. You can't ask, if you don't get funding in the low-density, could you be considered for border-to-border? Or if you don't get funded, switch it around. You have to make a statement at the beginning and apply for one or the other. The application for the low-density pilot is similar. A lot of the regular information is asked for, and then we also, if you're applying for low density, you have to provide a fiber map, passings per mile, an explanation of the need for the higher funding level or percent, and then we're also going to review to see if we've ever received a grant application for that geographic area before, because if we haven't, that's kind of an indication to us that it is a higher cost area where 50% funding wasn't feasible. So that's where we are with round 7 and 8. Just from earlier rounds, I think we've got about 25 projects that are 25 or 35 projects that are still open, although I know the team's been busy working to close out what they could, but there will, I think round 6 had until June 30th to finish, so a lot of the companies have a lot of the fiber buried, but they're working on the connection. So we're going to see several of them closing out first half of the year here. So that kind of talks about existing funding in the current round that's open. Next on the agenda for me is to talk about the money from NTIA, which would be the BEAD funding for infrastructure. Right now we are working with the $5 million planning grant. And that report is due July 12th, our 5-year plan. Additional funding from BEAD is that each state will receive at least $100 million in BEAD funding. And BEAD funding has 3 priority uses. One is to get broadband infrastructure to all unserved locations. Second is to get broadband infrastructure to all underserved locations. And then third is to get gigabit speeds to all community anchor institutions. And the state allocations will depend on those maps that the FCC is preparing, and based on each state's percent of unserved locations in the United States. And an unserved location is one that does not have broadband service of at least 25 megabits per second down, 3 megabits upload by a wired provider, or a licensed fixed wireless provider. Last summer, we had an indication that Minnesota's additional allocation above the 100 million might be in the $550 million range. If anything, we're seeing some pullback on that, but we really don't have any idea at this point, what our allocation will be. NTIA is on record as committing to announce those allocations by June 30th. So that'll be about 2 weeks before our 5-year plan is due. But that's not the end of reporting under the NTIA scheme. So we have the 5-year plan that's due July 12th. And then NTIA has an initial proposal due by all of the states 180 days after the NTIA issues its notice of funding amounts. So 180 days after June 30th will be December 30th of 2023. So that's when we have an initial proposal due. And then from the information we have is NTIA will review all of those initial proposals, and if approved, they will then release at least 20% of the state's total allocation. So that won't happen until sometime in 2024. I have no idea how long it will take NTIA to do the review of all of the initial proposals, but the longer it takes, the later into 2024, it pushes the release of that first 20% of the funding. States also have to submit a final proposal, and then the NTIA timeline has 4 years for implementation. So all of this BEAD funding will extend well into 2028 in terms of pushing the dollars out. So we have the 5-year plan due in July. We have an initial proposal due 6 months after the allocations are determined, which should be about December 30th of 2023. And then we have a final proposal that's due looking at the timelines sometime later in 2024 or early 2025. So a lot of reporting. The further out you get on these NTIA timelines, the less definition there is of what's required. So, I mean, what we're trying to do is focus on what we know, which is more of what we need to do over the next few months, driving to that July report. And I think Tom indicated in the chat, he left. So if we have any questions for Tom, we'll have to take him back and get back to you. And he's the best person to speak about NTIA processes and timelines. But that's what we could glean based on the information that we have. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Diane. That was very thorough and really appreciated. Questions for Diane? Looks like Steve Georgie.
So I'm reading a lot of different sources on the map and the fabric. I just read an article last week that there were 1 million additional locations added to the map, and now they're not going to add any more for some reason. But what has Connected Nations been able to discern changes to the existing map? Because I've got several locations that I know of that show up as served, and you can go in and it provides some, multiple information about providers and speed, and it's just I don't know what it is. It's made up, I guess, speculative perhaps, because those services are not being provided to those specific addresses. So I'm just curious what you can comment on that, Diane.
Well, the availability of service at an individual location is best known by the person or business at that location, and that is why Bree sent a letter that was published in many newspapers across the state indicating that folks should go to the FCC map and challenged the location. Where we have been focusing our efforts is on the fabric. As you may or may not know, the FCC used a fabric developed by CostQuest and whoever they may have used for their sub-vendors. So our option was also to purchase that type of data set and try to compare locations on the fabric from one kind of artificially developed data set to another artificially developed data set, or to use the financial resources that we have available in our 5-year plan to work and try to develop a locally, like county level sourced fabric. And so that's what we decided to do. So we have a project ongoing with MinGeo to try to get the locations developed county by county. For reasons I'm not really sure. Minnesota did not have that type of information. And so we're working to get it developed. And by that, I mean, parcel data and where a structure is located on the parcel and what type of structure it is, whether it's a business or a home. And that will have purposes other than broadband. So if we can get that data set developed, we'll be able to use that to justify who's unserved, who's underserved, where we put the BEAD funding, challenging the location type, whether it's a community anchor or whatever. So that's what we're working on in terms of the fabric. And we do know some providers have put in and reported to the FCC different methods than they had previously used for Form 477 or the method they had used for the Connected Nation data. But without that fabric in place first, kind of leaves you at a little bit of a disadvantage. So that's where we're working on. We did not do a bulk challenge, but that's looking like to be sort of a smart decision at this point instead of wasting resources doing that, where a lot of states did and got them all rejected. So the map and the allocations are going to be what they are, and we'll just work with the allocation and get the information we need to disperse the funding that we get.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. And I spoke to the director from NTIA last week as well, and it was the same messaging. I mean, the maps are directional to disperse, to allocate the funds to the states, and then the states decide based on maps available and more accuracy to figure out how to allocate projects. Barbara?
Well, I just wanted to add that we're focusing on moving ahead. In the meanwhile, it's pretty tough out here. We just did a new GIS map and we sent out 22,000 postcards, and we included the FCC map in it. And I got a screenshot of the from one of our residents that her current speed is 2.6 down and 0.65 up with a current provider. So she's not able to complete the survey with the speed that she has at her house. So I just wanted to raise that people out here are really suffering in the meanwhile, and getting surveys done is really a challenge.
Barbara, I can assure you we are aware of that. Hannah works in St. Paul. Not one of us is in St. Paul working. We are across the state with our own, I have DSL, Bree has fixed wireless. One of the staff has coax, two are on fiber, actually projects that border to border funded. So we are out in the communities using the services that are available at our locations. And, our intent over the next few months is to be even more engaged as, everything opens up with COVID and we start meeting with our partners to document in our 5-year plan. So certainly if you have meetings of groups or you wanted to steer someone to our office, we can help explain why the situation is the way it is and what may be coming or how to work. I mean, I know you do a lot of that at the Le Sueur County level. You're ahead of a lot of the other counties, but for other areas that don't have that engagement at the local level, we can help steer people to who they should talk to about getting improved service at their location, or whether the line extension program is a good option for them.
Okay, other questions or comments for Diane? Okay, thank you, Diane, for that update. And we're right on schedule. So let's take a 10-minute break and let's get back together at 11:20, and then we'll start back up with Hannah. Thank you.